Welcome to Ground RX Yoga. My name is Kaila. Ground RX Yoga, if you're not familiar, is a grounding restorative practice that will incorporate a number of different modalities depending on the teacher. Many of us incorporate meditation. Many of us incorporate some version of slow flow or yin, static postures. Some of us integrate somatic experiencing, somatic work, among many other things. So if you're looking for something that's low key and low to the ground, oftentimes this is an excellent class for you. We'll start in a nice tall seat. So if you'd like to sit on a bolster or something similar, please do. If you don't have a bolster at home, a sofa cushion or a stack of pillows, a rolled comforter, they all work just fine. So find your way to a nice tall seat. Cross-legged is fine. Before I get too much further, you'll also want a blanket nearby, a yoga blanket, or even a sofa throw works really well, something that's not too big, so that later on we can roll it up and use it for some belly release at about the halfway point. All right, so sit up nice and tall, hands to your knees or your thighs. Maybe drop your chin to your chest, roll your head side to side a few times. I'll start there. Feel into your neck informally. And when you feel like it's time to become still, take your head back to the center, sit nice and tall. And spend a few moments on the inhale and the exhale. And by that I mean just follow the inhale and the exhale like you would a dog on a walk. You're just sort of trailing behind the inhale and the exhale. I would be willing to bet that most of us will find as we begin to follow the breath that there are leftover bits of dialogue from your day so far. That perhaps there is commentary on what is to come with the remainder of your day or the remainder of your week, the remainder of your year. And as you continue to follow the breath, the invitation is to allow for that dialogue to circulate like ticker tape in the air for a little while. And to breathe into the tone of the dialogue, to lean into how it feels, what it sounds like, the subject matter. Find that as each subsequent inhale arrives or each exhale leaves, there's this feeling that the script begins to flip and the ticker tape begins to settle. the dialogue begins to fall, and the metaphorical volume of the breath is rising. Breathing easy and soft, and relatively continuous, and feeling that everything else you have going on begins to fall away. I'll ask you to sit with the breath and maybe a little bit of physical sensation. How is your body today? While I read to you a poem called Evidence, which is about a great number of things, but I think mostly about being present with what is real, being present with what is currently happening in the body or in your world at large. Where do I live? If I had no address, as many people do not, I could nevertheless say that I lived in the same town as the lilies of the field and the still waters. Spring, and all through the neighborhood now there are strong men tending flowers. Beauty without purpose is beauty without virtue. But all beautiful things inherently have this function, to excite the viewers towards sublime thought. Glory to the world, that good teacher. Among the swans, there is none called the least or the greatest. I believe in kindness, also in mischief, also in singing, especially when singing is not necessarily prescribed. As for the body, it is solid and strong and curious and full of detail. It wants to polish itself. It wants to love another body. It is the only vessel in the world that can hold, in a mix of power and sweetness, words, song, gesture, passion, ideas, ingenuity, devotion, merriment, vanity, and virtue. Keep some room in your heart for the unimaginable. There are many ways to perish or to flourish. How old pain, for example, can stall us at the threshold of function. Memory, a golden bowl, or a basement without light. For which reason the nightmare comes with its painful story and says, you need to know this. Some memories I would give anything to forget. Others I would not give up upon the point of death. They are the bright hawks of my life. Still, friends, consider stone that is without the fret of gravity, and water that is without anxiety. And the pine trees that never forget their recipe for renewal. And the female wood duck who is looking this way and that way for her children. And the snapping turtle who is looking this way and that way also. This is the world. And consider always, every day, the determination of the grass to grow despite the unending obstacles. I ask you again, if you have not been enchanted by this adventure, your life, what would do for you? And where are you, with your ears bagged down as if with packets of sand? Listen, we all have much more listening to do. Tear the sand away and listen. The river is singing. What blackboard could ever be invented that could hold all the zeros of eternity? Let me put it this way. If you disdain the cobbler, may I assume you walk barefoot? For myself, I have walked in these woods for more than 40 years, and I am the only thing, it seems, that is about to be used up. Or, to be less extravagant, will, in the foreseeable future, be used up. First, though, I want to step out into some fresh morning and look around and hear myself crying out, "The house of money is falling. The house of money is falling. The weeds are rising. The weeds are rising." Keep some room in your heart for the unimaginable. All right, so keep breathing well, my friends, and do this for me. Shrug your shoulders up toward your ears so that it feels like they are rising up into the height of your spine. And then drop the shoulders down and back, descending slowly through the upper traps. And then take a moment of pause at the bottom where there isn't anything to do before you start again. On the inhale, shrugging up, feeling how the neck itself and the shoulders themselves wrinkle. When you exhale, they roll back ever so slightly while descending nice and slow. 3 more of those. The inhale for the rising action. And the exhale for the descent. Inhale for the rising action. Exhale, descend. One more. Inhale, rising up. Exhale, descend. Pause here and tick your head to the left, allowing for the right neck to become long. Feel free to tip your chin up in the air. See if your throat doesn't have something to say. And when you exhale, swing your chin through the center, tongue passing over sternum. Roll to the other side, so it's now left neck that's nice and long. Right ear to right shoulder. Tip your chin high in the air. See if your throat doesn't have something to say on this side. And then exhale to swing through a few times left to right or right to left, whatever pattern you have happening. Let it be really fluid and kind of soft. At some point, you'll come back to the center, chin over heart, and then raise your chin high after that. So your head goes straight back to the degree that your neck will allow. And with the base of your skull resting into the neck, you take a nice long inhale right here. And a big full exhale as you return to neutral. Nose pointed straight forward. Take a beat to revisit that breath you began with, trailing the inhale and trailing the exhale. Okay, moving on to more shoulder, hands behind the head. Interlace your fingers in a basket weave and place your thumbs at the base of the skull. Maybe thumbs reach down the neck by a little bit and feel how your elbows are nice and wide, like you're looking to expose your underarms to some degree. That probably feels a little bit like cow to some of us, so inhale to lift your heart and look up ever so slightly. And when you exhale, curl into yourself, navel to spine, and elbows toward each other as you tuck your chin down and allow for a little weight to come into the back of the head. The inhale is for rising back up, elbows opening wide so as to expose the underarms and ribs flaring a little bit toward the screen in front of you or the top of your mat. And when you exhale, you curl. So it's cat and cow with hands behind the head. As you go back and forth between the two, your elbows are widening and narrowing as you see fit. It might be a little, and it might be a lot. As you go, see if there can be some sort of marriage between your elbows and your hands and your head so that they're not working against each other. Rather, they seem to move as a chorus, the kind of singing that services the uppermost spine, the kind of singing that opens the ribs for 3 more tucks and 3 more lifts. I'll invite you to finish as you like. I like to end on the lifted aspect of things. Take your left hand down to the floor, release those hands, and stretch your right arm up and over, slipping into a really easy side bend. Maybe look up to that wrist, to that forearm. And then inhale to cartwheel through the center, right hand up and over until it meets the mat, and you side bend this way. Maybe look up toward that elbow or that wrist. And cartwheel back and forth between the two several times here. Left hand on the earth so the right arm may reach, and you look up through the center into the other side, feeling how the ribs continue to free up. But now there's also something about either waistline. When your left hand is on the floor, it's right waistline reaching down and up simultaneously. Good, and now cartwheel and left waistline reaching down and up simultaneously. One more time, let's go left hand on the floor, right arm up and over. And one more time in your own time, right hand on the floor, left arm up and over. Good, and then back to the center, where you take your fingertips to either side of your seat. Now, if you've been sitting cross-legged one way for a while, this is a good window to switch it. Opposite shin in front. As a side note, if sitting cross-legged is not readily available to you, 2 feet out front with pinky toes on the floor works well too. 2 hands on your seat, whether that's the bolster or the floor, is up to you, and I want them slightly behind you so that elbows are bent and you can get a little lift in the heart. Last moments up here. And we follow this up with a forward fold of any kind, hands down in front of the shins, or in the case of feet matching, you've got hands to your feet. And you bow forward. Any amount. And breathe well. I'll invite you to once again trail the breath and live in the experience of your body as it is today. Remembering that, as Mary Oliver said, the body wants to polish itself. So could you allow for a little something new to come into the frame in respect to physical sensation? And can you tend to that sensation with your attention the same way you would tend to polishing something shiny and smooth here? Take 2 inhales more where you are. and 2 exhales more. On the inhale, you'll begin to roll your way up or rise as you see fit. If there are subtle movements that call to you on the way out, feel free to take them. And then eliminate whatever it is you're sitting on so that you can come around to hands and knees on your mat. Of course, you can always pad the knees if you'd like to. We're setting up with shoulders over wrists and hips over knees for a few rounds of classic cat and cow. If you're familiar, you can take off, running through your inhales and running through your exhales. If you're not familiar, know that cat and cow is a flexion and extension of the spine. So when you inhale, you lift your heart and look forward. And when you exhale, you curl the other way, navel to spine. You go back and forth between the two, several rounds here. If you'd like to close your eyes, you can. If you always close your eyes, maybe there's an opportunity to watch the world outside of you as you practice today. Let's take 2 more rounds, 2 of each, cat and cow. After that, the inhale will take you back to neutral, and we'll thread the needle, which means moving left hand to the middle of the mat, right hand up in the air for a big open-hearted stack. When you exhale, thread this right hand through just past the left wrist and set your head down on the floor. In this orientation, left hand is free to go wherever it would like to go. To help you lean into the twist. Let's take 2 breaths here. Send some air to the back of the body. When you're feeling ready, you come back out, left hand on the mat, right arm up in the air. Big inhale as you rise. And on the exhale, you come back down for the other side. Right hand to the mat. Left arm up in the air, big inhale. And exhale to thread the needle. Left wrist slides through. Set the side of your head on the floor. And breathe well. Remembering that right hand is free to move wherever it feels helpful in terms of progressing the twist. Let's take 3 inhales here. And 3 exhales here. As you're ready, right hand returns to the mat so that you may press up to the open-armed twist. Left hand high. And then exhale back to 2 palms. And you'll step those hands way out front to the top of the mat and stretch your tailbone up and back while you sink your forehead toward the earth. Take 2 or 3 breaths here. We're not here for long. Allow for your tail to be high and your torso to swing low. Last inhale right here. And last exhale. You're ready, you'll rise up, come back to 2 hands, and you have 2 routes from here. You can either return to a few rounds of cat and cow or take downward facing dog, if you know downward facing dog. I invite you to take something that feels like a balancing act, like, ooh, I have this lovely stretch in my rib cage to lean into, but I'm also willing to feel the power of my hands on the earth, or in the case of downward facing dog, a nice long stretch in the legs, perhaps a pedal of the heels. If you are the sort of person who likes to flow, that is, go to plank, lower through, take cobra, and then down dog, feel free to do that now. If not, no big deal. A rinsing, as it were. And then you come back home to hands and knees. And I'll have you locate your blanket and roll it up into something that looks like this, right? So I've got a tube that fits into the palm of my hand, 3 or 4 feet wide, so that you can take it to the mat left to right or horizontally. And we'll continue to work from all this rib cage business down into the waistline or into the psoas. And if you're not familiar, the psoas is a muscle that literally ties your leg bone, your femur, to your torso, to your spine. So it's a pretty sizable muscle that runs through your belly right about here, going from the front of the thigh to the back where your spine is. And it can be responsible for a lot of hip tightness, hip flexor tightness. So we're going to use this blanket in the belly to look for a little release, okay? What you'll need to do is lie down so that and I'll show you my hip bones here. You want to lie down so that the blanket begins at your hip bones, the bony process at the front. But eventually we're going to wiggle forward so that the blanket actually dives into the belly by a little bit. And then we allow for gravity to do the work, okay? You'll do this with your legs stretched out long. So find the bony processes of your hips and start there. For a lot of us, this in and of itself might be a lot, right? In fact, I'll have you lie on your forearms, rest here. And it should feel like your belly kind of plumps out toward the floor, right? I want you to allow for that to happen. Feet can be as wide as they need to be. Elbows on the ground, tuck your chin. And take a few breaths right here. If you would be more comfortable with your forehead on the floor, go ahead and nix the elbows and do forehead to hands like this. Take a few breaths there. Notice for me if the hips themselves, like the place where your pelvis and your thighs come together, notice if there is resistance to the blanket there. Like, is there gripping? Is there a feeling like, ugh, I can't let go? I want you to work through that first. If that feels really difficult, like accessing release, isn't possible, try just like gently bending your knees a few times, like walking the feet or waving the feet. Can you let your gut be soft while your feet do some floating? Okay, so if you're down on your forehead, come up onto your elbows for the transition. In order to slide the blanket from hip bones underneath your tush to your belly, your body needs to go backward in space, right? So you'll see that I'm sliding the blanket up into my belly flesh. My waistband is actually traveling with the blanket, which is okay as long as you don't give yourself a wedgie, right? Possible wedgie territory here. And you'll see, if I give you a perfect profile, you'll see that my hip bones are now off the blanket, and I don't want you to do this, but I'll roll to the side. So you'll see that the blanket is in line with my belly button, and it's actually in the soft part of my gut here. If it feels crampy, don't panic. I want you to rest down on your elbows or your forehead and breathe. If you want to wave your feet just a teeny bit, inch or two off the floor, that can help some people to relax in the belly, just to have something else to do, right? So now it's the same set of questions that we had before. Is there gripping or resistance to gravity here? Is there something about your abdominals that wants to tense against the blanket? Which I would say is a natural response to what we have going on here. I think we think of shoulders and hips as places where tension rides, but tension can live in the abdominals as much as anywhere else. So what we're looking to do here is to free up that gripping, yes, by using the blanket as an implement. So take 2 or 3 breaths more here, and then I'll give you something different to do. Stay with me. It can feel like a lot for people. A lot of women that I've worked with translate this feeling to menstrual cramps. So if it feels like menstrual crampy, I would say that you're in okay territory, even though it can be sort of unpleasant, of course, to cramp. Take one more big inhale. And a solid exhale. Keep breathing and come on back to the elbows. You'll keep the blanket where it is. And watch how the right knee, I'll do my right knee, you can do right or left, travels off to the side like a half frog. So you can bring that knee up just about to the blanket. Couple of steps to get to the next place. So right knee off to the side, left arm on the other side is going to thread through like what we did before. Okay? Now, there's a couple places to go from here. If that feels like a lot, use your right wrist as a pillow and just stay. Now you should be leaning a little bit more into the left belly. Yes, so breathe there for a few inhales and a few exhales. If that's enough for you, plenty of sensation, things are going on, you're welcome to stay. If you're looking to take things a little bit deeper, it could be that right arm goes up in the air, and I'll do this real slow so you can watch. Right arm goes up in the air, and right shoulder begins to roll back into a twist, which means your right leg is going to come with you a little bit, right? And you roll open knowing that right shoulder may not drop all the way down to the ground. I like to open and close several times, right? So right hand might come back to the floor. Beautiful. You can feel how your belly wrinkles over the blanket, lean into that release, and then open up. So now you're doing a familiar twisting action, or familiar for some of us, twisting action. with the influence of the roll in your waistline. And I want you to continue to lean into release. No tight bellies here. No navel to spine for this exercise. You're letting everything hang out. Your head is going to lift and lower if you are doing the active twisting. And if at any point in time you feel like things are becoming too busy, you can come back to head on right wrist and rest there. Let's do one more big inhale. If you're twisting or moving, you'll resolve that. Good. And then begin to exit. That means arms need to come undone, right leg needs to stretch back, and you're rolling into center. Remember that there can be a response to coming onto the center, so take it nice and slow. If you feel crampies, do what you need to do to breathe through. Elbows are a good place to be, or forehead. Take a breath, relax. And then the other side, this time it'll be left knee up and out for your half frog. Take a moment on the elbows to arrange the half frog. Make sure your blanket roll is still in the soft part of your belly. It'll be right arm that threads through like we did earlier, and left wrist becomes your pillow. By crisscrossing the arms in this way, we've got a little bit more lean to the right. And if you want to go for the active twisting at any point, the movement of the arm is fair game. The first time I learned this particular exercise or this particular setup, I found that the twisting, the active up and down of the left arm was really satisfying and felt accessible, and there have been many other practices since then where I feel like it's better to lie still. So allow for the movement to come to you organically, if it does at all. In no way are we worried about the depth of the twist. Rather, the softening of the belly is at the top of your list. All right, take 2 more inhales and 2 more exhales. If you are moving, you'll resolve that in your own time and begin to travel back to neutral, extending both legs and unraveling the arms so that one last time you can come back to the middle. And what I'll have you do as we resolve this exercise is just sort of march the hips left and right. Super informal squashing of the belly. Before you press off of the blanket, picture, materialize that movement in your brain before you go, sort of lessen the shock of things. And then in no particular hurry, hands to the mat, knees stay down, and you press up and back. Child's pose is going to feel really good. Sometimes I like to let my elbows rest on the blanket roll. Sometimes I push the roll away. Utilize it as you see fit. Nice wide-kneed child's pose. You'll continue to let your belly hang out. So even though the blanket is no longer there, how is it that you can express the softness of your belly? Go ahead and put a little attention in your low back. A little inhale to the hips. Maybe exhale out through the mouth. Good. And then inhale to hands and knees for that downward facing dog again. If you're not familiar, downward facing dog is a tuck of the toes, lift of the knees so that you are an inverted V with your tailbone nice and high. See how the belly feels after all of that. And for the first time in a little while, introduce a little tone behind the belly button. If you are a vinyasa person, feel free to flow. A plank, you lower through to the mat. It might actually feel really brilliant to lower your belly to the ground without the blanket there. Take a small cobra, sustaining some tone behind the belly button. And then exhale, release back to hands and knees or down dog, you choose. When you get there, nice deep breath in. The full exhale. As you're feeling ready, friends, bring your knees to the mat and take a quick flip from your hands to your seat. We're going to spend the rest of our time on our backs, so if you have socks or sweaters you'd like to put on, feel free. If you don't have those things, you could unravel your blanket and have it ready nearby for rest. Same for the bolster. And then come onto your back, bringing left knee into chest as you come down. Right foot on the floor to start. With your right foot on the mat as is, you can stay with this hug of the knee. That might feel like plenty. For others, left hand to the outer aspect of the left foot might be available. If you do that, do so with the elbow inside the knee. So that if it's available to you, left foot could go up in the air like half a happy baby. And I want you to use your right foot to rock some weight back and forth, side to side, on the back side of the left hip. So we spent all this time softening the belly, and now we're tending to the other side momentarily. Whether you're holding your foot or your knee, your right leg, could reach out into a nice long line, if that feels available to you. eventually 2 hands to your left knee again. You can release the half happy baby and take a supine twist. With your right leg straight, your left knee can travel across the body. Left arm reaches long on the mat. If the asymmetrical legs, that is legs that do not match, feels like too much for you, your right knee can come in and stack beneath the left, if you'd rather. That would be fine. What I'll invite you to do here is to breathe well into the left hand waistline. Another 5 or 6 cycles on this side. Okay, friends, on the next inhale, start to bring that left knee back through to center. You're welcome to hug it to chest one last time if that feels like right action to you. And then set that left foot to the ground and bring the right knee into the chest. Remember, we begin with left foot on the ground, knee bent, so that hugging that right leg close feels really accessible. And there's a solid press of thigh to low belly. Strong arms, strong hands. Some of us may progress to that half happy baby. Right elbow inside the knee. Right hand to the outer aspect of your foot. And a little rocking, mostly to the right, so as to squash out the back of the right hip. Let your head sway on the floor. Whether you're holding your right foot or your right knee, your left leg at some point may stretch out. Straight or nearly straight. Does not need to be all the way. When you're ready to resolve this half happy baby, you can release the foot and twist right knee across the body. Let your right arm and right shoulder drape open. And remember that if stacking knees would be a better fit for you, feel free. Several breaths here. Breathing well into right waistline. And even though you are twisted or wrung out here, there is a feeling that the belly continues to surrender and the waistline continues to surrender to the movement of the breath from the inside out. On your next inhale, friends, bring both knees back to the center, perhaps one at a time. And land in the middle, knees bent, so that they both may come into your chest, one palm per shin. And rock a little left to right, from side to side. So much so that your elbows may tap the floor. And if you would rather make this a full happy baby, feel free to raise the feet and rock that way. And let your head swish on the floor either way. And do that thing where you follow the breath for a few cycles here. You can rock as long as you like, and when you're feeling ready to be done, you can take your feet to the ground. I'd say hands on belly at that point. For a few of those inhales and exhales. As you lie here and breathe well, feel that the sacrum and the back of the pelvis are readily grounding down. Nice and heavy, as though they are resting in sand. And feel that your body is divided evenly between that grounding and expressive, free-flowing breath, particularly in the front side of the body. Maybe you open your mouth and sigh a couple of times, just to sort of accentuate the release. If you haven't already, you may start to extend the legs and kind of wiggle your way to a more permanent resting position. This might be the place where you pull the blanket onto yourself, cover up to stay warm. It could be the place where you slide a pillow, a cushion, a bolster beneath the knees. If lying flat on your back is not a place that offers comfort for you, you could lie on your side, curled up, or even take a tall seat like where we began today. Whatever it is, I invite you to follow the breath like you've done a number of times during practice today. And lean into or sit in observation of whatever sensation your Shavasana offers up today. And feel how the ticker tape of the body is willing to settle here. And you find that you are still with yourself inside the sweetness of your home, the same way you might be still when watching grass grow or observing a breeze. If there is any at all, you allow for the dialogue to rise and fall as it will. And return as many times as you need to the fluctuation and the steady reliance of your breath. It's here that I'll leave you to rest, friends, as long as you like. You extend your Shavasana according to how the day has been and according to how your practice went. If you have questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to myself or anybody else here at the studio. We'd love to help. Until the next time, my friends, I hope that you'll be good to yourself, take care of other people, and continue to breathe deeply along the way. Namaste.